Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here. Day one of Blizzcon is in the books, and with that, we have a lot to talk about. We've indeed gotten the classic Burning Crusade launch, I guess you can say, confirmation. We've gotten a lot of information about 9.1, a bit about 9.0.5, and what we can expect in the Maw, and what the next raid is going to be, as well as, hey, you know, the Anduin storyline. Spoilers ahead, boys, in case you haven't figured it out. But yeah, so now there were a lot of things announced today at BlizzCon, some from a PvE end of the spectrum, some PvP, and some like general mount things, which are pretty awesome. But there were a few hot topics today, some in Burning Crusade Classic and some actually for 9.1. So I want to sort of summarize those and give you guys my thoughts on them from a PvE perspective with a bit of PvP mixed in. Let's be real here. Now, I will say, as far as Classic Burning Crusade is concerned, if you guys voted in the poll last week, awesome, thank you. If you didn't, I will have a link to the poll down below. It's basically asking, would you be interested if I covered Burning Crusade content? Burning Crusade is the expansion that I started playing the game in. I always liked Burning Crusade. Don't hate me here. But I've always said Burning Crusade is a better version of vanilla WoW. Now, listen, I know that alienated some people there, and there's some give and take. But I do truly think that Burning Crusade is an awesome expansion, and it's awesome to go back and see it. The boss are still gonna die really quick. Things are gonna fall over in a second. But it's the nostalgia element that I like. So if you haven't voted in the poll, feel free to do so. But with that being said, let's get into the Burning Crusade part of this video and talk about why I'm excited for it, but also what big changes need to be made to their actual release phasing and preparation schedule, because there are some big ones. None of you guys knew that I had a classic Warlock, did you? Yeah, this is when I was streaming to like 8 people and had less than 3,000 subs on the channel. We're at almost 50k now, and 500-ish viewers on Twitch, which, by the way, if you're not following me on Twitch, feel free to swing by, do so, hang out anytime. My Warlock is 60. We don't really have much gold or much gear. I basically made my robe with a void and then stopped playing the game, but you know, that's that. So getting into all of this, there were obviously Classic Burning Crusade was announced, which is awesome. I'm really excited about it, but there are a few points that I'm sort of critical of here, and this is the first one. So it's basically what happens with your character when Burning Crusade is released. Essentially, existing realms with the patch will become the new Burning Crusade content, and they also mentioned these are going to be their progression realms for future expansions. Plural expansions, by the way. Some people caught that in chat when we were watching it today, which is pretty interesting. I think we can say for the most part that people would love to actually have Wrath at some point, but that's probably a couple years down the line if that ends up being the case. So the big thing here, if you choose to have a character remain in Classic WoW, it will be available to play on a new Classic era realm. These new realms are available as new game clients, I guess, arise. Friends from your original realm who also choose to play on Classic era will join you on the same realm. So it sounds like they're going to be predetermined versions, like if you're on Fairlina, like, you know, Fairlina 2 or whatever. It doesn't sound like you're going to have your own choice of what realm you can go to, which is fine for the most part. That's okay. The big thing here, though, so if you choose to go to a Burning Crusade server, let's say you're on Fairlina, Fairlina will progress to a Burning Crusade server, and you no longer are on a Classic server. You cannot play that Classic character unless you buy the character copy cloning, I guess, feature that they have here. On patch day, you'll be able to open the Battle.net client and choose which game you want to play, BC Classic or WoW Classic. Your existing characters will show on both game types until you're under your own old realm names. Once you've chosen a game to play, you'll select a character to play and confirm your choice. Sure, sounds simple enough. If you decide you like to play your character in both game types, you'll be able to use an optional paid service to gain access to the cloned character in both game types. I'm going to be real here. I get that they probably do need to make, I don't say make more money on this. It seems sort of like a cash grab in a sense, but I do get that for the most part, if you play live and also have, you know, retail and also have interest in playing Classic, it's essentially for free. So I get the reason as to why they're looking into doing that. It seems a bit to me, but you know, in the end, it is what it is. There is that option. Then all you need to do is log on as you normally would play. So number one, the big thing here that really concerns me, and that wasn't addressed at BlizzCon at all whatsoever, is that, let's say, for example, I have my Warlock. I'm in a guild. I don't think I even am in a guild at this point, but I'm in a guild, and I say, okay, I want to go to Classic Burning Crusade, but I also still want to play vanilla. I don't really know at this point why you want to play vanilla, because everything's done, but regardless, I want to go to Burning Crusade. Well, they've also mentioned that, let me get rid of this, that Classic characters, you can snapshot your characters, but the actual there's no gold cap on transfers. This is a huge issue. This is the one thing I was curious what they were going to do. On Blizzard Watch's interview, there are no plans to add any sort of gold cap when transferring to Burning Crusade servers. This is an issue. So Tips Out tweeted, I think a few days ago, mentioning that somebody in his, I think GDKP, whatever the run is you do in like WoW, where you spend gold in the run, paid 170,000 gold in classic WoW for a weapon from Nax. I don't know what it's called. I don't know what it even does. 170,000 gold. That's the equivalent to probably about 180 million in retail today. If you're comparing it from like, you know, how gold was in classic WoW. Now you had some people who hoarded gold, but they also had to bid against somebody who probably had a similar amount of gold to win that weapon. That's utterly absurd. And okay, I get the fact that they don't want to diminish people's, you know, achievements or whatever they've done to farm gold in classic. But here's the thing. Let's say I'm in a guild. My guild combined is, you know, let's say a couple hundred people, whatever, give or take. Let's say my guild is looking to min-max in Burning Crusade. Let's say my guild has this grand idea of, hey, we're going to transfer everybody to classic Burning Crusade server once at a time. Let's give all the gold from every single guild member in gold in the bank, or I guess the cap, whatever you can transfer over as far as like the classic cap goes, vanilla cap that is, to Burning Crusade, and then transfer that character over, but then have them copy it back on vanilla and give the gold to the next person. Like the gold inflation with that being a thing is going to be utterly insane. It's going to completely destroy the economy before the game even releases. Now, I get that they don't want to devalue the actual work that people have put in to classic, to grinding. That's fine. I think number one, that needs to be addressed. I think they just completely missed that in the development cycle. But number one, that needs to be addressed. Number two, I think there needs to be an option, if people want to do it, to have realms that either have a gold cap on them or just straight up are for boosted characters. Because Blizzard said you can purchase one level 58 boost and play that character, which means that, hey, if you want to level multiple alts, you probably have to do that on classic before it goes live. But there needs to be realms with a gold cap for transfers, or just like nothing being transferred gold wise. Because if people want to go crazy on the realms that have no gold cap, awesome, great. People are going to have flying within 6 hours, which is fine. I'm not trying to, you know, rain on anybody's parade, but the problem on those realms is that when it comes to raiding and like, you know, buying gear and BOEs are a thing. Whether you love it or hate it, they were a huge thing in classic, you know, vanilla when it released. BOEs are going to be so incredibly expensive, and gems are going to be expensive, herbs. It's going to tank the economy. It's going to be a nightmare to play on, and I'm not trying to exaggerate. I think it's going to really ruin the actual release. You know, people are going to completely control the market, and it's going to be an absolute nightmare. And the guilds who want to raid, you know, on a more, I guess, higher end schedule, let's be real here, bosses are going to die in minutes, probably the same in vanilla, but the BOEs are going to be so much gold because, well, chances are high they probably have the gold from vanilla, selling runs and doing GDKP runs, how it is. The game has changed over the course of time. I totally get that. But I'm just saying, as far as like nostalgia aside, it's just going to make it miserable for people who haven't farmed hundreds of thousands of gold, even just thousands of gold in vanilla. I would like to come back and play. I had not played as Warlock since phase 1. I logged out in front of Maradon to farm gold for my epic mount before the next phase came out. I never played it again, you know? So that is something that really, really needs to be addressed. If I was given the option of transferring this character to a realm that would wipe my gold and all my resources, I'd do it in a heartbeat over a realm that has no gold cap. If that's not addressed, it's going to be a really big issue for Burning Crusade's actual release, or re-release at this point. So the second thing that I think actually needs to be addressed with TBC Classic's phasing release schedule is the arena seasons. Now, it was sort of hard to decipher what they were saying because it went so fast over the course of Blizzcon, but the initial breakdown is that phase 1 starts with Arena Season 1, along with Karazhan, Gruul's Lair, and Magtheridon's Lair raids, which is awesome because those are all the tier 4 raids. You get your tier 4 from Kara, your Gruul's Lair loot. I think that was like legs, right? Wasn't Magtheridon helm? It's been a while, boys. But either way, tier 1 or tier 4. First patch, great, awesome. You have all the loot you need for tier 4, and you have the season 1 arena set for the most part. Then you move on to phase 2, which is Serpent Shrine, Caverns, and Tempest Keep. They should be grouped together because they were run at the same time for the most part. But there's no season 2 for arenas, which is interesting because you're going to outgear the relevant arena gear that you can buy because it's just not relevant anymore. You're going to outgear the PvP gear you can buy while still being in Arena Season 1 when SSD and TK come out. Now, that might not be the case for every single class, but it's going to wind up making for some pretty interesting, I guess, issues along the way. I do like SSD and TK being together though, because that is once again where you get all your tier 5 gear, and lumping the actual PvE tier progression together is a solid move. Phase 3, now Arena Season 2 begins with Hyjal, Black Temple. That was my big question when I was wondering about what they're going to do with phasing, is how are Black Temple and Hyjal going to be staged? Because Hyjal was technically available when the game first released, I believe. The issue was there was a long attunement chain to get into Hyjal and Black Temple. Hand of Adal is the title, if you see anyone wearing it nowadays, for completing that quest line before a certain point in time when that attunement was lifted, and anybody could go into Black Temple way later into Burning Crusade. But staging, or sorry, I guess phasing in a sense, Mount Hyjal and Black Temple is a great play. Because let's be real here, people would be in Hyjal and BT probably within the first day, or a few days after hitting max level, barring like the difficulty and progression of the raids being a lot tougher than people think they'd be. So phasing that out is really good, but I don't like Arena Season 2 coming out in Phase 3. I don't even do a tremendous amount of PvP. I'd probably do more in actual BC, because when Arenas first came out and I enjoyed them, but I really think they need to move things around and put Arena Season 2 here with Phase 2 to match Tier 5, leave 1 here, Arena Season 2 here, Arena Season 3 here, because you can see in Phase 4 it releases with Zul'Aman. Now, I think Zul'Aman, for what it's worth, it's an awesome dungeon raid. It's awesome. Zul'Aman was a great dungeon, I guess you can, whatever you want to call it, with the actual Zul'Aman bear runs. They were legit, and depending on the actual duration they want for Phase 3 and Phase 4, they can, you know, extend or shorten the actual length between them. I think it'll be enough content on its own to hold the player base over for a little while, because bear runs are runnable, you know, once a week for the most part. You're locked out, and it will keep them actively engaged in content. But moving Season 3 to Black Temple and Hyjal, where most of your Tier 6 comes from, the rest of your set, which is I believe 8 pieces from BC, came from Sunwell, like the belt and the boots and stuff. It was in Sunwell, but that's Phase 5. So I think going actual Season 1, perfect. Season 2 with Phase 2, Season 3 with Phase 3, and then Phase 4 being ZA. There's a lot of good gear in ZA. It matched, if not, a lot of Mount Hyjal Black Temple gear, which could also maybe push a bit of PvP gear out of the way, but that's fine, because Season 3 has been out for a while with Phase 3. So Phase 4 comes out, a little bit of time for ZA bear runs, and then Phase 5 releases with I Love Quel'Thanas, Magister's Terrace, one of the best dungeons ever, and then Sunwell. And there's no Arena Season there, although they could actually just do another Arena Season reset if they wanted, without really losing a whole lot. I think that would go a long way in changing up the relevancy of PvP gear compared to PvE tier gear, grinding all that out for the vast majority of classes, and hopefully it's something that we see addressed in the next few weeks. But as far as the actual phasing releases, I'm happy to see Tier 4, Tier 5, most of Tier 6, ZA, with a bit of time in between here, and the rest of your Tier 6 set. I think from a PvE perspective, this is a really solid release schedule. Maybe there needs to be a bit less time between 4 and 5, and there's like 2 and 3 or 1 and 2. But the PvP Arena Season scheduling probably needs to be addressed a tiny bit. Oh, and by the way, if you want to actually opt into Burning Crusade Classic Beta, there is indeed a link on the Blizzard main page. This is the Wowhead article. I'll have the link to this Wowhead article actually in this video's description, comment section, but be sure to opt in. I opted into Classic Beta, and albeit I had about 2k followers, not 70k or whatever, but regardless, I didn't get in. Opt in early if you want to play, because I think this beta is going to be really awesome. Actual release date, I'm assuming it's probably going to be sometime within the next month or so, give or take. I think it sort of hopefully is planned a bit around the 9.1 release date as well, which we'll get into in a little bit here, talking about patch 9.1, which is awesome. But I'm hoping we see beta within the next 2 to 3 weeks, honestly, and I would love to see like an April-ish release for Burning Crusade Classic. But at the same time, I could be way off. It could be way later on in the year, and hearing more about their planning and like initial changes and phasing and stuff, there's a chance that they're a bit more behind than I assume they might be. Now listen, I'm gonna say that I'm really excited for Burning Crusade Classic. I played it a long time ago. It's the actual expansion that got me into the game. I remember picking up Burning Crusade off the Walmart shelf at 3 in the morning with my father, and he laughed. I think he laughed. I don't remember actually, but either way, well, it worked out. Anyways, cringe laugh. But so outside of Burning Crusade Classic being awesome, but needing to know a lot more about that, also comes with 9.1 sort of being announced. It was announced at BlizzCon, but we didn't really get as much info, I'd say, as we maybe necessarily expected. We know that patch 9.1 has changed Domination, it has a new zone, Korthia, new Maw content, which we all assumed for the most part. Korthia is a small like subsection of the Maw from what we've heard. It's not a new zone entirely, but a portion of the Maw, a new dungeon and raid, as well as Mythic Plus and PvP Season 2. There's also the Chains of Domination cinematic. I'll have a link to that in the video description as well if you want to check it out. It's pretty legit. If at this point, spoilers probably sort of out the window. Briefly, a couple changes that went in. Flying Covenant mounts. If you guys didn't know, I mean, let's be real here. Every X.1 patch, typically flying is introduced. We've been on the ground for a few months at this point in time, and I assume for a few more months. So it's cool to see that the actual like Covenant mounts being a thing. I'm gonna be real here. Kyrion's okay. Nightface, literally a flying Vulpera snake thing. Neverlord's cool. It's like a radioactive fly, and Venthyr looks insane with these wings, but I'm gonna be a flying Vulpera, apparently. Instead, dear God, please Blizzard buff Necrolord or buff Venthyr. I'll even take Kyrian at this point. I don't want to be a flying Vulpera. But being real though, the mount, they all look cool. I'm partial to the actual Necrolord mount and the Venthyr mount. Flying actually around coming in 9.1 to a similar extent. There are a couple mounts that are being added as new Maw reward mounts. There's actually a hand mount, I guess this steed-esque looking mount with a couple pets. Another big change for 9.1, all mounts will now work in the Maw. This was mentioned early on in the panel. Later on they also mentioned that it's going to take a bit of progression through the Maw storyline, but hey, if you haven't done Twisting Corridors yet like me, I've got 4 out of 8 layers done. Well, maybe you want to weigh your options now, but we'll get to the actual my projected release date for 9.1 a little bit. But if you're not like doing the Maw every day, well, it might not be worth knocking out those corridors at this point if it's you know, gonna save you 10 hours of your life in Torghast. Moving on from the initial flying changes and mounts and stuff, the raid has been announced. Sanctum of Domination. In the Chains of Domination patch, the central area where the jailer has holed up with all his main minions is going to be our focus here as we raid the Sanctum of Domination. It is a 10 boss raid. You'll finally be able to face off against the terrible Terragru. The Terragru being the actual large, I guess, massive thing, this thing that chases you around in Torghast if you die too much. Now, listen, I killed it on beta. I think I might have actually. I know mages turned it in the chairs. I never killed it on live to get too much health. Yeah, kicked you out of Torghast many times. Now, we will also be facing off against the Eye of the Jailer, which is the like jailer anger buff. Normally up here on your screen when you go into the Maw and have to deal with his, you know, forces getting higher and higher. Also, we're going to be fighting Kel'Thuzad, which is mentioned somewhere in here. There we go. Any raid that features minions, servants, and soldiers of the Cold Dark, like this one, is going to have to feature our nemesis Kel'Thuzad, which we've seen actual in Naxxramas already at this point. Naxxramas, Maldraxxus, I guess both technically. And finally, at the culmination of the raid at long last, we'll be taking the fight directly to Sylvanas, Windrunner, the Banshee Queen herself. The final fight is going to change the future of the Shadowlands. Now, there's a few interesting things here. Number one, this is a 10 boss raid, which, being a second raid tier, I guess is sort of expected. With Nathria being a 10 boss raid though, I'm half wondering if they're going to try and keep the pace of 10 bosses per raid over the course of the expansion. Number two though, Sylvanas. Everyone's question is she going to die? And if you watch the cutscene with her and Anduin and the jailer that came out, even the one before where she was talking to Anduin about turning him, there's a bit of hesitation with her own character. I think a lot of it has to do with his storyline sort of being similar to hers, not really having any control over her actual fate. I'm not going to say there's a Sylvanas redemption arc coming, but well, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Blizzard tries to spin it that way. Personally, after burning down the big broccoli tree, I don't think there's much redemption left for her. Maybe a sacrifice, like a sacrificial, like, you know, save the world kind of thing, maybe at a certain point. But the other interesting thing here is that there was a lot of speculation heading into like BlizzCon that Maldraxxus was going to be the next raid. I'm pretty sure they mentioned that the final raid boss of the expansion is supposed to be the jailer and it was going to take place in the Maw, but we're already heading into the Maw in the second raid here, which is interesting. It sort of throws everybody a curveball because most of the spoilers that I had seen matched up, but everybody said Maldraxxus. This is the Maw, so we'll see where that goes. Getting back to the 10 boss raid though, So as far as like estimated release dates go for 9.1, we know that we're in 9.0.5 on PTR right now, and we know we're probably going to be in 9.0.5 PTR until I would assume probably the second week of March, give or take. They said they wanted the release to be March, which I would assume we're here, probably a couple other weeks of testing. Like, they've done legendary tuning, they've done class tuning, and they've started on covenants. They haven't done soul binds, they haven't done conduits, and they also mentioned they're looking for more feedback on conduits for 9.1 at Blizzcon. So I'd assume over the next 2 weeks we see soul binds, we see maybe some covenant tuning and conduits. PTR ending here-ish and probably a release, I'm guessing here, but it could correspond to the dungeon event because, hey, you know, Valor and Blizzard likes to be cute with that kind of stuff. But my big concern or question is actually, when are they going to actually start testing 9.1 PTR? This is a 10 boss raid. Looking at a normal raid testing schedule over the course of PTR, typically they test every single boss on heroic, barring it being bugged or unfinished, and then normally every single boss on mythic, barring the, like, excluding the final boss. But at times they test bosses over and over and over. We tested Council of Blood like legitimately 6 times in beta, SLG a few times, and look where that ended up. But that was beta. However, they're going to need a decent bit of time to test these bosses. Now, 10 bosses, typically there's 2 raid testing days per week unless they really want to push. That means 4 bosses tested per week. With 20 bosses, you know, 10 heroic and 10 mythic, you're looking at a minimum pretty much 5 weeks of raid testing. And that's not including testing bosses again. That's not including, you know, potential bugs, issues of having to reset the actual boss or push it back till next week. So at the earliest, I mean, if we get like 9.1 PTR, let's say March 30th, that means they might start raid testing like even that same week. That's, you know, week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you have like a week of like release stuff at the earliest, probably a 6th week. That means you're looking at like at the earliest, maybe like a mid-May release for 9.1, unless they really push things, or unless like I really had this wrong here. But the raid typically doesn't drop until like 2 weeks after the patch drops. So I'm going to be real here. I don't know if we're going to be seeing the next raid until June. I could be wrong, and I hope that I'm actually wrong with this, but it seems like we very well might be in Castle Nathria for a little while. And the fact that we really didn't hear any dates about Sanctum of Domination or see any concept art for boss, really for any, we saw a little bit here, but nothing of the actual dungeon or raid itself. No actual like boss concept art. There wasn't really any like real elaboration on what Kel'Thuzad was going to be. Fate of the Damned, Eye of the Jailer, we know the Terragru, and Sylvanas, which they probably want to keep sort of shrouded in mystery. With it being a 10 boss raid and not really hearing a whole lot about it, I don't know if we're going to be seeing this raid before June, at least 9.1 until May. I think that might even be sort of a conservative guess at this point. I'm very curious as to where the Sanctum of Domination and 9.1 release date is going to go. Now, in addition to the 9.1 Chamber of Domination, I think it's Chamber of Domination, Chains of Domination, Sanctum of Domination. Listen, hey man, it is what it is. I'm not going to judge. Either way, there's also being a new mega dungeon introduced, which is very similar to what Mechagon was. They did not technically totally clarify if it was going to be a part of the Mythic Plus dungeon circuit or not when they first mentioned it. They said it was on Mythic mode, which didn't totally clarify, but in this post here it says it will be without a Mythic Plus version, similar to Operation Mechagon. So it's an 8-boss raid, or I guess dungeon, very similar to what Mechagon was. I would assume we probably see it in 9.1.5 or 9.2, probably 9.2, when the next Mythic Plus season actually begins. With that being said though, this dungeon looks really awesome. Tazavesh, the Veiled Market, revolving more around the I guess brokers we've seen, like Venari in the Maw, other features like Orbos in actual Shadowlands. A broker trading city, 8 bosses, mythic only for now. By the way, the Infinite Dragon Flight Pirate patch-eyed boss looks utterly insane. Please, Blizzard, please give me this mount. There's no way this is not a mount. And if it is, I said double legendaries was a missed opportunity. No, this is the biggest missed opportunity in Shadowlands if this is not actually a mount. With it comes more bosses, more items as well. You have this interesting disc mount, a couple of pets, and a lot of like weapon skins, reskins, which are pretty cool in itself. But a pretty awesome dungeon. Not really a whole lot to talk about besides that. I believe it actually is located in the new Maw zone, if I'm correct. Let's be real here. Mechagon, whether it was Mythic or Mythic Plus, was a pretty big hit. I'm a fan, personally, of Mega Dungeons, very similar to Upper and Lower Karazhan, you know, both versions of Mechagon. So hopefully Tazavesh actually hits home, and from the actual description of it, it sounds like it's going to be a pretty awesome dungeon. So we know about the 9.1 raid, we know about the mega dungeon, the flying being a thing, and most of what the bigger systems at 9.1 are going to entail. But there were a lot of questions that weren't really answered, and I wish they had been touched on at BlizzCon. Tier gear, Stygia, Soul Ash, legendary, double legendaries, more legendaries, a legendary catch-up system. Wasn't really talked about a whole lot, but this interview emerged right after BlizzCon ended for the day, which I don't know the name of this website. I'll have a link to it also in the video description below. You have to translate it, I believe, from Chinese to whatever language you speak. The translation is a bit rough here, but there's a couple of hard-hitting questions in here that Blizzard actually answered and just completely left out of BlizzCon, which is interesting because these are the most important questions. So you can read over these. Once again, the translation is a bit awkward, a bit rough at times. Basically, this says that the new zone in the mall is going to be similar to the Isle of Thunder in a sense. A bit of Anduin stuff, recommend the new player stuff, but interesting. Here we go. Will Soul Ash have a catch-up mechanism similar to Fame? I would assume this, I don't know what Fame is, but some system in 9.1. We need to know that if a player has maintained a character for several months and has several legendary items, he will have more choices in different situations. However, at this stage, a character can only equip with a legendary equipment. I assume this is saying only one. At this stage, they can only equip one, so maybe that's foreshadowing double legendaries. I'm not really sure. Even if it's a new character, you can quickly make a legendary equipment suitable for you. So this sort of says to me like there's not really a reason for a Soul Ash catch-up because you can only make one at this current point in time. We do add a certain Ashes chase mechanism in the new version so that players can make new ones without too many stages of the story. The legendary equipment, but we still think that the current mechanism is still appropriate, but as the game progresses, the Soul Ash chasing mechanism will be added in the future. So it sounds like they might be nerfing which like the level of Soul Ash you need maybe to make like different ranks of legendaries when the like 9.0.5 or 9.1 releases, with maybe foreshadowing double legendaries at a certain point. But it doesn't seem like there's something on like that they're, I guess, totally set in stone on at this current point in time. It seems like if it's going to be a catch-up mechanic, it might be a part of 9.2, which we'll get to in a minute here. Tier gear, it's also here as well. So talking about flying here, basically we've seen the zones, it's awesome, it's cool. There we go. Question here. The 15th floor of the Great Secret Realm is a BattleNet achievement. Can the Trumpet use this achievement to quickly upgrade equipment? So from what I understand with this translation, I believe they're referring to Valor and Keystone Master. I assumed the Great Secret Realm was like Torghast, but I don't really know what else they'd be talking about, and we sort of like through chat and everything sort of deciphered this is probably the achievement. As long as one character obtains the achievement, all trumpets under the same name can enjoy the benefits brought by this achievement. I assume trumpets being characters and stuff. So this, I don't know any 15th floor of Torghast like correlation to things being account wide and having some achievement. I assume this is Keystone Master and this is like the full 15 achievement. If this is the case, that's awesome. One of the reasons I didn't like playing, or I didn't really level many alts in BFA, sorry, Shadowlands, is because the gearing was sort of miserable. You know, like you'd hit max level and then you'd sort of go into plus and okay, I can't really do much here. But if I can get Keystone Master early on my main, just level alts and slowly grind Valor, I'm so down for that. That is an awesome change if that is indeed going to be the case. The question here, we face Sylvana, so we kill her directly. There are too many spoilers to comment. Basically, TLDR, it's going to be an insane fight, but they can't really say much, which to be fair, it's a loaded question. So now this is talking about Torghast. They do say that they're disappointed at certain times. They're disappointed with a handful of things. People dying, having to reset things, the Terra Group being more punishing than they wanted. They also mention here that the Terra Group is a boss in the next raid, meaning he's not going to be present in Torghast anymore itself. So they're looking at a new way to, I guess, sort of change the death running out of lives mechanic in Torghast, but they're not actually sure of how they're going to, I guess, you know, bring that on at this current point in time. I assume we see it at some point in 9.1 PTR. Can you talk about the big secret affix of the second season? No, they can't talk about the next affix. So this is a very interesting question. Can you talk about the design concept of the new Covenant armor, and will professional suits return in the future? So somebody translated what it meant. I believe a professional meant character suits. I'm assuming tier sets. And what the actual answer here is sort of seems to follow suit with that. Pun half intended. We hope that players can better explore the background storyline of the Covenant. The appearance armor of the Covenant in the game is also designed based on the game background. In the new version of the Covenant appearance, we've added the physics and law system. The distinction of occupation, as for the suit, I assume this is tier once again, will not appear in this version of Chains of Domination. It will appear in the next stage of the team. So once again, the translation here is pretty rough, but from what I've seen, talked about in a couple of streams, other places as well, people are assuming this is actual tier gear. And this is sort of saying there's not going to be tier this time, or whatever tier gear you think there might be, whether it's like actual 4-set bonuses or some different version of tier. If that's what they're referring to, which it seems like they are, it's probably not going to be until 9.2. So yeah, take it for what you will. So hey, maybe double legendaries instead, but oh wait, probably not. I think at this point I'm going to put that out to pasture and just well, you know, let it go. So old characters returning, you'll see some people you already know. That's sort of cool. The big question here, will the upper limit of AoE, the AoE target cap, be adjusted later? You can read over this for yourself as far as this is concerned here, but well, TLDR, no. It's basically lawyer speak for we like how the AoE target cap is, and we don't really care how the community feels about it. Honestly, if you read the answer, it's sort of hard to like totally put into words because the translation, but it does indeed seem to be like the AoE target cap will probably still be a thing for, well, at least the foreseeable future until we complain more. Probably, let's be real here, 10.0. But it's cool actually seeing this interview come out. I'm sort of wondering, I guess these questions might be answered in the Q&A tomorrow. I don't really know why they weren't addressed at BlizzCon itself or even brought up with tier gear and everything else, but hey, you know, is what it is. So yeah, as far as BlizzCon's concerned, I think it was a pretty awesome day one, even though a lot of the info came from sources outside of BlizzCon. I'm sure we'll probably hear a lot more over the course of the Q&A tomorrow at, 3 p.m. Eastern. Now, once again, the thing that I'm really looking for is there going to be a Stygia reset? Because Blizzard has clarified that the actual conduit items to give you in the higher level conduits and the legendary socket items are going to be labeled seasonally, but that doesn't do anything if Stygia is still the currency and it's not reset. So I'm really hoping that a Stygia reset comes in, because I don't want to have to hoard 110, 120,000 Stygia just for, 9.1. So I assume that's on their radar, but I guess we'll see. As far as release dates go, like I said, I'm really assuming with 9.0.5 hitting probably somewhere around here, money being on 16th or 23rd, we're probably not seeing 9.1 until like mid-May, and the raid like late May or actually going into June. So that opens up a lot of questions as to what's going to happen with Burning Crusade Classic, because like I mentioned earlier, I'm pretty sure Nax Ramus in Phase 6 released like a week and a half or 2 weeks after Shadowlands did, and I feel like people cared, but people couldn't really care as much because of Shadowlands and stuff. Now I know COVID's a thing and the release date being pushed back, all of that, I totally get it, but I'm hoping to see, there's been rumors circulating around that Burning Crusade is like alpha and beta, I think it's beta at this point, is probably going to be starting up within a couple weeks here, early March. I've heard it we've honestly been hearing it even before the announcement was officially made. I would love to see an actual like beta startup somewhere around like here-ish, like end of next week going into the week after. And then depending on how much they need to test in beta, I would like if they could make like an April release work, like after 9.0.5 drops, Valor's died down a little bit, Classic Burning Crusade hits April, let's say like here-ish, April 20th, 27th, and then you go into May, 9.1 hits, raid in June, and you go from there. I would really like to see a better effort from Blizzard with staggering phases with live. I know that they're two different games, two different clients, and in the end, there's only so much you can do. But like I said, I really wanted to play Classic WoW, but the biggest issue with it was just timing. It released like in the middle of Hall of Fame progression, and I know that's probably going to be the case to a certain extent now again, and also leveling in Classic WoW was a lot more taxing than it will be in Burning Crusade, which is a good thing, because hey, I don't want to level to 60 again at this point, but I'm just hoping they can get a better timing down, pacing wise, phase wise, staggering live and staggering actual BC if at all possible. But yeah, besides that, I think BlizzCon's been awesome, man. A lot of awesome WoW announcements. I'm really pumped for it. Let's be real here. The actual Diablo cinematic was insane. The Anduin cinematic was pretty legit too. I'll have links to all that down below. And thank you again, Wowhead, for all the awesome data being published again today. Thanks for watching the video, boys. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Let me know what y'all think of BlizzCon, of, I guess, the tier sets being pushed back, legendary soul ash crafting, all that stuff. If you have anything to say, feel free to drop it down there. Any questions, put them in there as well, or swing by stream, ask anytime. I will be sure to get back to you. If you guys want to see more WoW content and help support the channel, smash the like and subscribe buttons as well. Thanks again, dudes, and I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Happy BlizzCon, boys. Peace.